When the veil was finally lifted and the world got its first glimpse of the United States F-47 Striker, a sixth-generation fighter jet cloaked in secrecy and built with unmatched precision, the atmosphere shifted in every major military command center across the globe. From Moscow to Beijing, from Tehran to Pyongyang, intelligence officers scrambled to understand how far ahead America had leaped in the race for aerial dominance. This wasn't just another fighter. The F-47 Striker wasn't born in a lab for speculation. It was forged in classified hangars, tested under layers of satellite-proof coverings, and trained by a select group of elite pilots sworn to silence. It was the ultimate embodiment of American air supremacy, a response not just to global threats, but to the future of warfare itself. With a body made from adaptive materials capable of absorbing radar, like a sponge in the ocean, the F-47 was a ghost in the skies, undetectable, unpredictable, and untouchable. It used quantum computing to process threats in real time, making split-second maneuvers before enemy pilots could even react. The cockpit was a digital throne, powered by artificial intelligence that worked not as a tool, but as a partner, interpreting pilot thoughts through neural link synchronization to reduce reaction time to milliseconds. Its engines ran hotter and quieter than anything seen before, thanks to a fusion-assisted propulsion system developed under DARPA's black budget projects, capable of breaking speeds once thought impossible, even with stealth capabilities engaged. When this beast first roared into the skies above the Mojave Desert during a covert night trial, seismographs in nearby towns recorded tremors, not from impact, but from power. And when foreign satellites caught fragments of its silhouette, blurred through atmospheric distortion, international analysts labeled it the Phantom Reaper, unaware of its full potential. But America knew, the Pentagon knew, and when the president gave the go-ahead to officially unveil the F-47, it wasn't for intimidation. It was a message that the United States no longer played catch-up in aerospace dominance. It had built something that redefined the rules entirely. At its core, the F-47 wasn't just a machine of war. It was a shield, a sword, and a statement. With modular weapons bays capable of switching from hypersonic missiles to precision EMP payloads mid-flight, the Striker could dismantle an enemy base without ever entering contested airspace. It could perform unmanned if needed, piloted by autonomous systems smarter than any defense AI on the planet. Its jamming suite alone could black out enemy communications across a 200-mile radius. Even aircraft carriers, once considered floating fortresses, had to evolve to accommodate its maintenance complexity and launch capabilities. And the cost? An estimated $2.6 billion per unit. Pricey, yes, but invaluable in a world where aerial superiority defines national strength. Its deployment during Exercise Iron Sky shocked America's allies and adversaries alike. Allied pilots cheered as the F-47 tore through mock enemy squadrons in seconds, while Russian, Iranian, and Chinese observers watched with silent dread, realizing their own fifth-generation fleets had just been rendered obsolete overnight. What terrified them wasn't just the speed or the stealth or even the firepower. It was the unknown. The Striker's data remained heavily classified, and every detail that leaked only raised more questions. Rumors spread that it could operate in near space, intercept satellites, or that it had cloaking capabilities similar to sci-fi fantasies. Some claimed it carried directed energy weapons capable of melting enemy drones mid-air. Others swore it could deploy nanotech surveillance devices while flying over hostile territory. And yet, the most terrifying aspect was not its hardware, but its strategy. The F-47 was not just built to fight. It was built to change the way war is fought. It could connect and command drone swarms, share real-time battlefield data with ground troops, and synchronize with naval strike groups within seconds. Its brain wasn't in the cockpit. It was in the cloud, in orbit, in every digital battlefield node America controlled. In a hypothetical full-scale conflict, the F-47 wouldn't just destroy targets. It would collapse enemy defense networks from within. When it participated in joint exercises over the South China Sea, Chinese radar stations went dark without ever hearing a sonic boom. When it soared across Eastern Europe, Russian jets scrambled and locked on, but found nothing but empty skies. It was a ghost until it struck, and once it did, nothing stood in its way. Even its psychological impact became a weapon. Pilots from other nations reported feeling defeated before takeoff, knowing their best jets were decades behind. This is the jet that terrified the world, not just because it could win a war, but because it made starting one a losing proposition. The F-47 Striker is proof that American innovation doesn't sleep, that freedom still has defenders in the shadows, and that while diplomacy is always preferred, the United States remains unmatched in power when provoked. In the hands of its elite pilots, trained under Project Phantom Wing, it becomes more than a fighter jet. It becomes a guardian angel, an avenger, and a nightmare for any enemy foolish enough to test its resolve. And as it silently flies above contested skies, invisible and invincible, one thing is clear. America has unleashed a future warfare, and the skies will never be the same again. As the sun set behind the horizon, casting long shadows over the air bases of the United States, the F-47 Striker, America's sixth-generation fighter jet, stood poised on a tarmac like a silent predator awaiting the next hunt. Its black, angular silhouette shimmered under the hangar lights, like a beast forged from future metal, armored with radar-absorbent skin that bent light and sound like a magician with nature itself. It was not merely a machine. It was a very embodiment of deterrence. The airborne saw a superpower that had grown weary of cat-and-mouse games on the global stage. The Pentagon had authorized limited displays of the Striker's might, not to taunt the world, but to remind them all that while America may be patient, it is not to be provoked. The F-47's inaugural overseas mission wasn't a combat sortie. It was a demonstration, a show of power. High above the Pacific, it flew at supersonic speeds, flanked by a digital storm of drone escorts, weaving in tight formations that defied conventional aerodynamics. Civilian satellites, foreign observers, and even adversary radars tried to capture its signature, but failed. Its stealth profile was so advanced that even when they knew it was there, it simply didn't appear. News agencies worldwide buzzed with speculation, showing grainy images and computer-enhanced visuals while military analysts scrambled to make sense of it. They compared it to Russia's Su-75, China's J-20, but nothing held water. The F-47 was something else. Born not just of engineering, but of philosophy, dominate the skies before war even begins. Inside its cockpit, the pilot experienced flight like never before, no longer relying on stick and throttle alone, but also on Neuralink controls, where mere thoughts guided trajectory, targeting, and tactical decisions. In simulations, it defeated squadrons of enemy jets before they even crossed the radar threshold. During a covert exercise in the Arctic, a single F-47 neutralized an entire electronic warfare setup, using a combo of directed EMP bursts and cyber disruption tech embedded into its weapon suite. That mission never made the news, but nations noticed, because the next day, they halted their own tests and exercises. Whispers of the F-47 began circulating in high-level defense meetings across the world, from Beijing's subterranean command centers to Moscow's icy military outposts, and even among America's closest allies, who knew only fragments of the beast their friend had built. The aircraft was capable of seamless intercontinental strikes without mid-air refueling, powered by a quantum-fueled turbine engine that granted it unmatched speed, range, and near-zero emissions. But it wasn't just the flight capabilities that terrified the world. It was what the F-47 carried. Its modular weapons bay could adapt mid-mission, shifting from long-range hypersonic missiles to drone-deploying pods to anti-satellite payloads. It had the power to engage enemy fighters, destroy naval fleets, scramble satellites, and disappear into thin air all in the same mission. The world had seen fifth-generation fighters dominate in previous decades, F-22s, F-35s, Su-57s, but the F-47 wasn't a step forward. It was a leap that changed the rules of air supremacy entirely. In a classified test above the Nevada desert, an F-47 simultaneously tracked and eliminated 18 moving targets, including aircraft, land vehicles, and decoys, using a blend of AI targeting and hypersonic ordnance that struck faster than sound. The results were undeniable. Countries that previously dared to challenge U.S. air power suddenly revised their postures. Rogue states delayed weapons tests. Hostile submarines pulled back from American carrier strike groups. Even cyber attacks on U.S. defense infrastructure saw a sharp decline, as adversaries grew cautious of triggering a retaliation they couldn't see coming. The Stryker didn't just dominate the air. It dominated perception, psychology, and deterrence. It was war without firing a shot. When the U.S. deployed 2 F-47s for joint drills with NATO in Eastern Europe, the move sent shockwaves across borders. One aircraft flew under the radar straight through contested airspace, flew over a mock enemy HQ, and transmitted a high-resolution 3D map of every building, antenna, and heat signature, all without being detected. The footage was later shown behind closed doors to NATO commanders, and the room went silent. This wasn't just a fighter jet. It was an airborne command center, a ghost, and a hammer. On board, its pilot was supported by an onboard AI assistant named Talon, capable of predictive decision-making, live threat analysis, and even counter-hacking enemy systems mid-flight. This partnership between human and machine gave the Stryker split-second superiority in every scenario: dogfights, reconnaissance, or electronic warfare. And when rumors leaked that the F-47 could deploy a swarm of autonomous micro-drones to intercept enemy missiles or jam defenses, rival generals began to fear not only what they knew, but what they didn't. The moment the F-47 first entered a live combat environment was not during an American operation, but in a multinational defense response to an escalating crisis in the South China Sea. Tensions had flared over disputed territory, with a hostile power positioning long-range missile batteries and threatening to shoot down any aircraft that crossed their self-declared air exclusion zone. While diplomats scrambled and warships closed in, the United States authorized a stealth recon operation using a single F-47 Stryker. What happened next became the stuff of legends. Launching under the cover of night, the Stryker activated its optical invisibility suite, essentially bending light around its airframe to become invisible to the naked eye, and pierce 600 miles of enemy-controlled airspace without setting off a single alarm. It flew just 200 feet above the water at Mach 2, undetected, as it mapped every radar station and SAM site in real time. Then, in one synchronized strike lasting less than 15 seconds, the F-47 neutralized 6 radar installations, launched cyber assault drones mid-flight, and jammed enemy missile guidance systems, all while feeding mission data back to the Pentagon. No one saw it coming. No one heard it. And when the sun rose over the region the next day, the missile batteries were charred wrecks and the enemy command center had gone dark. That single mission shifted the entire geopolitical balance in the Pacific. Foreign media outlets speculated about an alien craft. Military analysts dubbed it the Ghost Jet. And back in Washington, lawmakers who had once doubted the F-47's cost were now asking how many more could be built before the end of the fiscal year. Within a month, international arms races were reignited as rival nations panicked to respond to the emergence of a jet that outclassed everything they'd ever known. China pushed forward with experimental drone swarms. Russia unveiled conceptual 6th-gen prototypes, but none came close. The F-47 wasn't built to compete. It was built to dominate. It was the first aircraft designed not for today's battles, but for the wars of the next 50 years. And the world was forced to play catch-up. Inside the cockpit, American pilots described the experience as flying in a futuristic space command center. Every inch was built for function and lethality. No analog dials, no delay, no guessing. The pilot's visor fed real-time augmented reality overlays, and their gloves were equipped with neural feedback sensors, allowing them to make flight and combat decisions with simple finger gestures or thoughts. If a threat emerged, Talon would suggest a preemptive counter. If the mission parameters changed mid-flight, the onboard quantum system recalculated strategy faster than any human ever could. One pilot called it, "Flying with Guardian Angel made of pure firepower." But behind the scenes, the F-47's biggest breakthrough was its autonomy. In training simulations, the aircraft demonstrated it could conduct full combat sorties without a pilot, evading, engaging, and returning home all on its own. This revelation terrified adversaries. What if America no longer needed its brave pilots to dominate the skies? What if entire fleets of F-47s could be deployed simultaneously, piloted by AI minds faster, smarter, and more ruthless than any enemy force could counter? The implications were world-changing. Air superiority, once contested and hard-fought, was now programmable. As news of the F-47's capabilities spread, military briefings across the globe took on a new tone: caution, uncertainty, and undeniable awe. In NATO meetings, member nations urgently requested deeper cooperation with the U.S. to gain limited access or share defense strategies involving the Stryker. Allied pilots came from all corners of the world to witness training exercises, hoping to get a glimpse of the aircraft in flight, though most left only with distant glimpses and heavily redacted reports. American citizens, meanwhile, took pride in knowing that the skies were no longer a contested domain, but a realm now firmly under their nation's control. Recruitment surged as young patriots dreamed of one day sitting in the cockpit of the Stryker, even though only a select few would ever be qualified to do so. Behind every flight stood thousands of engineers, analysts, and strategists who had pushed the limits of science and imagination to create a war machine that wasn't just effective, it was untouchable. And for all its technical brilliance, what made the F-47 truly terrifying to adversaries was its flexibility. Unlike any fighter before it, the Stryker was modular by design. Components could be swapped in the field, whether it was adjusting stealth configurations for different terrains, changing out weapons payloads for kinetic or EMP weaponry, or updating mission software in real time via satellite uplinks. In one demonstration, a prototype unit in Alaska was remotely reprogrammed from a cyber defense center in Virginia mid-flight, allowing it to intercept a simulated hypersonic missile that no other jet in existence could have reached. It didn't just set a new standard, it destroyed the old rulebook. And while other nations scrambled to respond, America had already moved on to building the next generation of autonomous aerial strategy, with the F-47 at its heart. Classified documents leaked months later revealed plans for squad-based aerial formations, where multiple F-47s would fly in unison with swarms of AI-operated drones, forming what defense officials called sky hives. These formations could coordinate across hundreds of miles, responding to threats dynamically, executing strikes with mathematical precision, and withdrawing without leaving a trace. One Pentagon advisor went on record saying, "This is not just a future of warfare. This is the dawn of an entirely new era of dominance." The F-47 is the spearhead of a paradigm shift that we may never fully understand until it's too late to catch up. But even as America surged ahead, concerns loomed. Ethical debates swirled around the aircraft's autonomous capabilities. Would it one day make life or death decisions without human input? Could it be hacked? Could it be duplicated by foreign adversaries with the right tech leaks? The military assured the public of its security layers, dozens of them. But in the world of cyber warfare, no system is ever truly impenetrable. That didn't stop development. That didn't slow progress. Because the F-47 was already here, flying above conflict zones with impunity, training day and night with elite pilots, and ready to deploy wherever America's interests were threatened. It had become more than a jet. It was a symbol, a ghost in the sky that every enemy radar feared, a whisper of thunder before the storm, a machine that didn't just fight wars, it ended them. One strike, one mission, one shockwave across the world. And in the heart of every American who watched it fly, there was a pride of knowing that the skies were not just defended, they were owned. By the time rival nations caught up, it would already be too late, because America had already changed the game. And the F-47 Stryker wasn't just a jet that terrified the world. It was a jet that rewrote history. And as world powers scrambled to decode the tactics behind this airborne marvel, the F-47 Stryker had already slipped into the shadows, running Black Ops missions in denied territories, tracking targets so high on the threat scale, their names didn't appear on any documents, not even in redacted form. Satellites picked up vapor trails in contested airspace over the South China Sea, and while some claimed they were routine weather patterns, insiders knew better. The Stryker was out there, flying fast, flying silent, and watching everything. Enemy radar sites would blink off for minutes at a time without explanation. Missile convoys would be found destroyed with no sign of an incoming threat. Underground bunkers that had remained hidden for decades were suddenly vulnerable, painted with laser precision from 60,000 feet by a jet no one could catch. Tactical superiority wasn't just about firepower anymore. It was about omnipresence, and the F-47 was everywhere. Nations began rethinking their entire defense postures, investing billions into anti-stealth radar grids, electromagnetic warfare stations, and underground hardened air bases. But nothing seemed to slow down the American ghost. In interviews, retired generals admitted, "This changes everything. We used to talk about air superiority. Now we're talking about total air dominance. The Stryker doesn't just contest the skies. It erases the enemy's will to fight." And yet, while the rest of the world was reacting, America was already expanding. Rumors circulated of a carrier-based variant, the F-47N Stryker Naval, a beast of a jet built for deep-sea launch missions, capable of launching from Ford-class supercarriers with electromagnetic catapults, cloaked in radar-absorbent material that even satellite heat mapping couldn't lock on. Inside hangars guarded 24/7 by elite JSOC units. Prototypes were being tested with vertical takeoff capability, hypersonic scramjets, and experimental fusion reactors to push range beyond anything thought possible. Global adversaries, watching helplessly, began to realize that even their combined fifth-generation fleets were no longer a match. Not in the air, not in speed, not in stealth, and certainly not in firepower. And while they poured resources into catching up, the U.S. had already begun the unthinkable, pairing the Stryker with a new class of orbital drones launched from Space Force platforms, creating an interlinked combat chain between air, space, and cyberspace. Intelligence agencies called it Project Skyweb, a real-time synchronized battlefield operating system where the F-47 became both the spear and the scout. It could identify a threat in Kazakhstan, relay data to a satellite above the Pacific, and execute a strike with drones coordinated in real time from a sub in the Indian Ocean. All within seconds. War as we knew it had evolved into something surgical, invisible, and terrifying. Military historians would later mark the arrival of the F-47 not just as a technological leap, but as a moment where geopolitical balance shifted permanently. Power wasn't just projected, it was omnipresent. When tensions rose in Eastern Europe, the mere mention of a Stryker deployment was enough to force de-escalation. When rogue states threatened nuclear escalation, leaders would mysteriously disappear, removed with such precision the world barely noticed. Nations stopped challenging airspace. Fighter drills turned into defensive exercises. Aircraft once proud of their stealth and speed suddenly looked like relics in a museum. The F-47 wasn't a deterrent. It was judgment at 60,000 feet. And still, deep within DARPA's Black Labs, engineers weren't satisfied. With the help of AI co-pilots, Neuralink combat systems, and hybrid fusion engines, they were already building the successor, the F-47X, so advanced it could think, react, and adapt mid-flight without a single human command. But for now, the Stryker reigned supreme, a beast above the clouds, unmatched, untouchable, and utterly unstoppable. And the world? The world held its breath, knowing that when the F-47 took off, there would be no warning, no escape, and no tomorrow for those who dared stand in its way. America had once again rewritten the rules of warfare, and this time, the ink was forged in titanium, radar-absorbing paint, and the scream of a jet engine no one else